go ahead and mute everyone just to make sure we don't get any background noise. Or actually, Keturah, could you do that for me? I'm sorry. All right. Welcome to our Welcome to our 2023 Library Advocacy Campaign Kickoff meeting or workshop. I can go with either one on that, but this is a great opportunity for us all to come together and talk about the things that we're planning to do within this first quarter of the year to connect with our elected officials at the state level to advocate for state aid to public libraries and libraries in general, both operating aid as well as capital aid. And before we go any further, I just want to see, Keturah, have you been able to start recording? We are going to record this session just so everybody does know.
Yes, we are recording.
Excellent. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Brian Hildreth. I'm the Library System Director here at STLS. I love advocacy. This is one of my favorite projects that I was able to take on when I became a System Director, and it was something that I did for a very long time as a member library director as well. I think my very first advocacy day was back in 2003. Yep, so 2003. So it's been some time doing this. So I love doing it as a member library director. I absolutely love doing it as a system director. And as I look through the number of participants that are here today, I know many of you enjoy doing this work too. Whether it's going out and meeting with elected officials at the local or state level to talk about how important libraries are to our communities and how we impact the lives of community members, but also doing stuff that doesn't necessarily involve like actually speaking with elected officials, like generating social media campaigns or, running funding referendums to get the word out about local public funding, or just going to meet with civic groups or community groups to talk about what libraries do, or going to the school district and talking about the work that the library is going to do over the summer learning program and how important it is for kids to come into the library when school's out of session. That's all advocacy work, and it's all very important. Anytime that we're talking about libraries and wearing our public awareness hats, it's beneficial to how we make sure that libraries are around for a very long time to come. And it's also important because it helps build up our democratic principles of making sure that we are a citizenry that is well informed and that all members of our citizenry have equal opportunity to educational and informational resources. I'd like to first welcome my colleagues, Keturah Capadonia and Erica Jens. They both work with me here at STLS, and they're going to help me lead today's workshop. And they probably have a lot more good things to say than what I have to say, so I'm glad that they're here. Okay. So next slide. Today's workshop, it's only going to be about 45 minutes long. We're not going to try to keep you here all that long, but we do want to go through some really important things that are part of our advocacy campaign that we do every single year. We've learned through trial and error and mistakes and successes that these are the things that have been working for us in terms of informing elected officials about how we impact our communities and the amount of money that is required for us to do this work. So, we're going to talk about the current climate in Albany and what funding in the past has looked like, what funding might look like in 2023. We're going to talk about our postcard campaign, both online and print postcards that we're going to try to get our community members to fill out as many as possible and bring to our elected officials so that they see those postcards and they hear from our community members literally the week before they vote on the budget. So we just want to give them that last minute reminder through those postcards to let them know the people back home are counting on them to do good work in Albany. We're going to talk about I Love My Library social media campaign. Eric is going to go in detail about how you can work with community members and staff to use your social media platforms to get out the word and not only encourage people to fill out those postcards, but at the same exact time just promote to your community through social media what libraries are doing and why it's important to raise our voices. I'll be talking a little bit about our email and phone call campaign. This is really traditional grassroots type advocacy work, but it is impactful. We've learned that, especially within our region, you guys do an amazing job of encouraging people to submit email messages as well as call legislators to let them know that library funding is important. And then we're also going to talk about just the key talking points this year. Katura is going to go through and let us know what are the pieces of information that we want to share with legislators and what legislators are going to be looking for from us in terms of how libraries align with state budget priorities. We have a new second year with a new governor, and so this governor has different priorities than previous governors. We also have Senate and Assembly representatives who have different priorities than what the governors are. So it's always kind of a strategic way of making sure that our messaging works really well to inform them about how libraries fit into their overall plan of funding the state. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Advocacy Day. We're super excited about that this year. It's coming back on February 28th. We are going to pull together a bus and partner with 4 county library system. We're going to try to get up to 25 STLS advocates from our region to get on that bus, and 4 county library system out of Binghamton and Johnson City are going to try to do the same exact thing. So we're going to get about 50 people to head into Albany on February 28th and walk up to the Capitol, all inside, nothing outside. I know it's cold that time of year, but walk up to the Capitol and talk to our 6 elected officials to let them know about libraries. And we're going to be there with you for the ride. It's something that Katura and Eric and I love doing. And so we're going to make it a journey or an experience. I don't know what we're going to call it this year, but it's going to be a lot of fun for everybody that does it because we know it's a long day. We've been doing it for a long time, so we just want to make sure it's a good experience for everyone. And then I'm just going to close this out with just talking about why advocacy is important. And I might actually lean on you guys to kind of help me with that before we close out the meeting. The biggest and most important thing about advocacy is just sharing stories, and that's what legislators really want to hear. So we may take an opportunity to do that before we close out here today too. Okay, we can go on to the next slide, Katura. This is the thing that I get really passionate talking about. Again, I know many of you heard me say I've been doing specific public library director work in New York State since 2003 through multiple local libraries, and then obviously here at STLS in the system. It's frustrating for me. I've been doing this work for almost 20 years now. I know I've got at least another 15 years to go, and I really hope that when I do walk away from this work that we've moved the needle on state aid funding for libraries in New York State. In 2021, we were below funding levels as what is written in education law. So no different than for higher education as well as secondary school in New York State. The legislature passes education law and puts a minimum threshold in terms of what each funding entity should receive in New York State. And libraries have a threshold of about $102 million. We have yet, the last time we've met that threshold was back in 2008 and 2009 when we were going through the Great Recession. And so it really hasn't been since that time that we've met that threshold in terms of what's written in education law. Last year in 2022, we saw a bump. It was actually just one of 3 years in my 10 years at being at STLS that we actually saw an increase in state aid to libraries, at least on the operating side. And it was about 4.5% increase. And that's a really good thing for all of us. One, it increases the local library services aid that each one of you receives as a member library. So that's just that small fraction. For many of you, it's like 1 or 2% of your operating budget, but it's something. It may be your collection management budget. It may be a few more programs that you can offer during summer learning program. All of those things are absolutely necessary for you to fund. And so receiving that piece of the state pie to do that work is important. So for you guys to get an increase of 4.5% and that aid amount is good. We went from 110,000 to 116,000. Construction aid is probably the most financially advantageous program to member libraries, as well as us as a system that operates and facilitates that funding program. If you go back almost 8 years now, actually a little bit more than that, if you go back about 10 years, construction aid was very marginal. We received about $300,000 across the entire system for 48 different library sites to do capital projects. And if you go out 10 years before that, we received about $20,000 a year. So at some point in time over the last 20 years, the legislatures realized that like funding libraries through capital projects is a really good thing. It's not just about getting their names on the front page of the newspaper every time a library does a ribbon cutting at a new capital project opening. It's because it's good for the economy. It creates jobs for local contractors. It creates improved library building spaces for community members to participate civically in different programs and activities. And that's also a social, cultural, and economic boom for our area. So last year, the governor, in her initial proposal, cut construction aid by almost $250,000. And her budget is due. Actually, she's going to present her budget next week, February 1st, 2023 at 12 noon. We just caught word of that right before we were going into today's meeting. And so it is our hope that construction aid is not cut, because if it is, it definitely financially impacts all of you. We have about, we're going through and doing our current needs assessment for construction aid in New York State right now. We have about $16 million, and this is lowballing it, about $16 million in capital needs for the 48 library buildings within our library system. As you can see, $800,000 a year barely scratches the surface of those capital needs. Each year when libraries apply for construction aid, we receive about $1.3 million in capital aid requests. So the $860,000 we get each year is about $500,000 less than what is being applied for. So we know that this money is important and we have to go out there and advocate for it. Central Library Development Aid, we get about $168,000. We have a new central library plan in place. The CCLD administration did a really wonderful job of transitioning a lot of central library aid from personnel costs to actual direct member benefit costs. And so what's going to allow us, that's going to allow us over the next few years to invest more money in electronic collections, which go directly to the benefit of all community members across the 5-county system. It also means more investment in print materials, nonfiction, that are holdable by member libraries on demand. It's not something that your patrons have to wait for. And it also means more continuing education opportunities that are funded by CCLD through Central Library Development Aid. And then just lastly, the last thing I'll talk about, the $1.2 million for STLS. Almost 60% of our budget comes from state aid. I've been here again 3 years, or I've been here 10 years, and we've only seen an increase in 3 of those years. STLS is very creative and proactive about securing federal funding. That's what allows us to to actually employ the most staff members of any rural system in upstate New York. I think that's something that we're extremely proud of here at the system. But we don't get a lot of funding from the state to do it. It only subsidizes about 60% of our budget, where the remaining 40% of our budget comes either through federal aid or member contributions to run the ILS. So I know that's a lot of me sharing that information, but that's where we're at. That's past funding and present status of state aid funding for our library system. And what I'd like to do is just kind of quickly jump into the current climate in Albany. So Couture, if you could just advance that slide for me. Governor Hochul has finally been elected. So when she originally took office, it was because Governor Cuomo resigned. And so that, as Lieutenant Governor, that was Governor Hochul's role. She's been elected now. And so her priorities, she addressed through the state just recently. And, you know, all those priorities are good and in alignment with the work that public libraries do. And so we're excited about that. But we're not exactly sure where libraries fall in that equation, and we won't really know that until February 1st. This is not an election year. So, you know, governors in New York State, they get elected every 4 years. So that gives them time to actually drill down into their priorities, which means they don't necessarily have to meet all the needs of all the stakeholders to make sure that they get elected. And, you know, so that's why we're a little bit less optimistic about what potentially will come out of this executive budget this year, especially knowing the fact that the governor did not propose increased funding for libraries last year in an election year, and she actually also cut construction aid in an election year. So what does that look like in a non-election year for the governor? February 1st, we'll have a little bit more information on that. The other things that we have some concerns about, if you listen to anything coming out of Wall Street or any political analysis or anything on the markets, you'll learn that there is a possible anticipated recession for 2023. You see companies are laying off in the private sector right now, mostly within the tech field, but that has a ripple effect in terms of what happens to the rest of not only the private sector, but also us within the public sector who relies on those funds. So we'll see what happens with the economy in 2023, but I can tell you elected officials are going to be taking that into consideration as they put together this budget. The governor also wants a balanced budget, so that's something that we have to be worried about. And then lastly, COVID relief has dried up. So all of the federal funding that states received during 2020 and 2021 and parts of 2022, they've been all allocated and prioritized to the programs that they were designated for. This year for 2023 and 2024, all state aid is going to be coming out of operating fund only. So the state is relying on any tax revenues that we would normally receive and not the tax revenues that were redirected to the state through federal stimulus. So that's kind of where we're at in Albany right now. I wish I can give us all a more optimistic view, but I feel like I give you the same view every single year. It's kind of like doom and gloom. We've got to rally the folks to get up and do the good work and raise our voices and talk about what we do. But even if it was, nothing but sunshine and blue skies, like we would have to do the same exact thing because advocacy needs to happen every single year. It needs to happen all year round in order for people to recognize that, libraries are important. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Erica Jens, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys can do locally to help us get this word out.
Thanks, Brian. So as Brian mentioned, we're really excited to be headed back to Albany in person this year, and we want to make a splash both when we're there in person, but also leading up to that. And then after we're there, we want to remind the legislators right before they make final choices on the budget about how important libraries are. And one of the most important things we do to make that happen is this postcard campaign. So we use print postcards and digital postcards to reach our legislators and offer a venue for our communities to also share with their legislators how much they love their libraries. And you can see on the screen in front of you, there is a screenshot of what the print postcards look like this year. These will be coming out to you in delivery next week. So please keep an eye out for them. And if you're a place that you're not the person opening the green bags, make sure you chat with your staff who received the green bags or green pouches. These will come out in the green pouches. So please keep an eye out for them. As I said, we do want to use these postcards to give as many folks in your communities a voice as possible. So I encourage you to consider, maybe you have space to make a display where you can put out a nice big stack of fresh postcards and some fun pens and markers in a collection box. You could share a few quotes from folks who have told you how much they love their library as inspiration for people who are filling out the cards. Often we get more than just a signature and the county filled in. People will write us a note or their child will write a note about how much they love the library. And I know our legislators appreciate seeing that personal touch. So encouraging people to be excited about this and to fill out postcards. The goal is to send a huge stack to each of our legislators at the end of the time. So we will ask for you to send these back to STLS by March 17th, and then we will spend time sorting them into stacks to go to each of our legislators according to the districts that they serve. And then we mail them right before the budget is due. And we want to just send them like a very heavy stack of postcards so they can see the weight and influence of library supporters across the Southern Tier. If you don't have room for a display in your library, that's okay. Maybe you can keep one or a stack on your circulation desk and encourage folks when they're checking out materials to fill out a postcard. They can take one home and bring it back. That's fine too. I'm also making a copy of a flyer for you with a QR code to the digital postcard. So if you have folks who can't come into the library, you can share the link to the digital postcard on your website, prominently feature it on the homepage so everybody can see it. Get it out on your social media accounts, encourage folks to be sending in digital postcards. If you run out of print postcards, please tell me. I have so many and I'm very happy to get them out in delivery to you right away so that you can keep collecting them. We really do want to make our presence known through this postcard campaign and send as many as we can. And we need your help to do that. So please encourage your patrons and community members to fill them out, whether that's online or in print. And we will print out copies of those online postcards so they get added to the weight of the stack. And we hope to really, like I said, make a splash with those this year. I just want to say one more time, those are meant to be sent back to STLS by Friday, March 17th. We will send you a manila envelope to collect them in. I know some of you in years past we'll kind of send them back in batches. If you could just rubber band them together and put your a piece of paper with your library name on them, it's helpful for us to know where they're coming from as they get sorted and pulled out of green pouches. So binding them together and indicating which library they're from is great if you have the opportunity to do that for us. Tara, I think we're ready for the next slide, please. In addition to the postcard campaign, another really meaningful component of our advocacy efforts that makes a splash every year is our library love on social media. So I Heart My Library. This started out as a selfie campaign, but folks don't have to take selfies. You can take photos of your patrons. They can take pictures of each other, whatever works. But the point is to get a picture of folks holding up the I Heart Library sign and then post it to social media, whether you share a story about how much you love your library with that or just posting the photo. Both of those things are really impactful, and our legislators love to see these pictures and hear about how much the community loves their library. It's positive for them, and they like to share it on their social media. They really like seeing themselves associated with these posts too. Tara and I will usually reach out to you around the actual advocacy day and ask you to just really bombard social media with these pictures. We want to, like I said, have an impact, make it known. Our region does a great job with this campaign. I will be sending you copies of the I Heart Libraries poster so that you'll have it. It's on a slightly heavier weight paper. You can have it out on your desk and just encourage folks to take a selfie, or you can take a photo of them when the time comes. We ask you to tag STLS, and you can see our social media tag, so tier libsys, on the screen there. When you tag us, we know that you've posted, and then we can share your post and tag our legislators across the region. There's also a couple of hashtags that we ask you to use. So that's Libraries Are For Everyone and Fund the Libraries. So if you include those hashtags in your post, that's great. If you are not the person who posts to social media, please encourage staff who do the posting to follow those guidelines and have a chat with them so that they know they should tag STLS and also include those hashtags. If you don't feel comfortable posting to social media, but you do want to get those photos, you can email them directly to me, and I'm happy to put them out through STLS social media channels. It's especially helpful maybe for folks on the screen. You can see a lot of our legislators are on Twitter, and they're also on Instagram. And I know predominantly libraries participate on Facebook as a social media platform, and most of you do not participate on Twitter. So if you don't feel comfortable posting at all, or you want to send your photos and have us post for you, please just send them to me via email, and I'm happy to put them up for you. If you are doing the posting on any of the platforms, we put together this sheet here on the screen. You can see in the top right corner, I've got the STLS social media handle that works across all platforms. And then down in the chart, you can see each of our legislators on the left-hand side with the districts they serve, so that you can figure out who represents you if you're not familiar. And then across the way, we've got all of their Facebook handles, if they have one, Instagram and Twitter, so that it's easy for you to find out what tag to use for each of them on the platforms. And if you have questions about posting to social media, or feel free to reach out to me. And like I said, you're welcome to send me your photos, and I'm happy to post them on your behalf. Thanks. I think I'm turning it over to Brian.
Yeah, I got this section. The one thing I want to add to that Erica just shared is she said that our region does a really good job of sharing out on social media. All of you do. This is kind of like some background information, but like New York Library Association actually keeps track of the number of legislators that are contacted each year by constituents. We rank up there in the highest in terms of rural systems that contact our legislators. Other library systems are also looking at other systems' social media presence. I would argue that STLS has one of the strongest social media presence of any upstate library system in New York State. So we're putting out just as much information as a lot of those downstate library systems, and that's because of all the good work that you guys are doing. So in terms of contacting elected officials, when the governor comes out with her budget on February 1st, whether it's good news or bad news, we need to start reaching out to the Senate and Assembly representatives as soon as possible, letting them know that whatever the governor put out there, we need to do better. So even if she gives us a 1% increase, we really need a 5% increase. Quite frankly, just based on current standards and taking into account the information revolution and all the 21st century technologies that we have in our libraries, state library aid should be about $147 million. It shouldn't be $102 million. So we're still $40 million behind where we should be, taking into account the information revolution that we experienced back in the mid-1990s. So email and phone call campaigns are extremely effective. The email campaigns we'll be sending out through our constant contact platform every other week. We're not going to hit you up every week, but we'll send out an email to the membership. So trustees, directors, volunteers, staff, and friends, you'll all be receiving emails with links that you can follow. It'll take you to the New York Library Association's website. There's an online form that you fill out. It's pretty easy to fill out. You actually don't really have to write in anything other than providing your name and, if you want, your email contact. And then it'll actually pre-populate who your elected officials are based on your geographic location. And then that will send an actually pre-generated message to your elected official, letting them know that you believe libraries are important. So we really know that those email campaigns are important. It just kind of keeps everybody within our system knowing that, like, hey, we've got to reach out. But also taking that online form that goes to those elected officials through the New York Library Association website and sharing it out with your patrons, or sharing it out through social media like Eric was just talking about. Making sure that your staff members, we all get paid some type of salary within the system at our libraries. That salary is supported by local library services aid. So it's not a bad thing for us to try to advocate for ourselves. So just making sure as many people as possible that are friends of libraries get that link and contact their elected official. That's fantastic work. Phone campaigns from a grassroots advocacy effort, in addition to the postcards that Erica was mentioning, this is probably one of the most effective ways of advocating. And the best way for me to describe it is, imagine if you're working working as an aide in a legislative office, and all of a sudden on the morning of February 2nd, all of a sudden your phone lines get jammed with phone calls from folks that are just talking about the amazing thing that libraries do. And what ends up happening, if you're an aide working in that office, you actually have to keep statistics, just like we keep door counts at our libraries. They have to keep track of the different phone calls that they receive based on and the type of issues that are lodged through those phone calls. So what happens when that aide logs like 20 phone calls from on libraries that morning? They share out that information with elected officials. And when you make phone calls to a legislative office, you're not going to talk to the Senator O'Mara. You're not going to talk to Senator Borrello. What you're going to do is you're going to talk to somebody that works at their front desk, and they're just going to say, why are you calling? STLS will actually provide you a script that you can use and literally read verbatim from when you make these phone calls. You'll just state your name, the community that you're from, and then you read the script. And then, the aide will say, do you have any questions for us? And if you don't, they'll say, thank you very much for making the phone call and have a great day. And then they'll tally down why you called and share that with the elected official. So again, phone call campaigns really are an effective way of getting the word out to elected officials about the importance of libraries. And the more that we can do, the more impact that we'll have. So, so you'll be getting more information through STLS by email when those phone call campaigns are happening, as well as when those email campaigns are happening.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Katura. Thank you. And exciting news, which Brian has already shared. We are getting back on the bus to Albany this year. If you've worked as a member library for, if you just joined in the last couple of years, you might not be familiar with our bus trip. But the last time we took the bus was 2020, shortly before the COVID pandemic really got into overdrive. So 2021 and 2022, we did exclusively virtual meetings with our elected officials, but we will be going back on the bus this February 28th. And those of you who have done it before know that it is a very rewarding, very fun, and also long day. Basically, we leave the STLS headquarters at about 6 a.m. drive to Albany, have meetings with our elected officials, and then drive back. We get back around 7 o'clock, I think, in the evening. So it's a long day, but it is really excellent to get into the actual physical halls of our state capitol and have meaningful face-to-face interactions with our elected officials. We'll be meeting with our state senators and assembly persons. And you can register now through our online calendar if you would like. If you're not able to go, you can also ask any trustees or volunteers. We've had a lot of different folks join us over the years. We've had babies, teenagers. We've had staff, directors, trustees from all around the region. I think our system does a really great job with the bus trip because our elected officials appreciate it. We all know that Albany isn't just a short drive. It's a big hike to get down there, and they don't see a whole lot of folks physically in their Albany offices from our area because of the distance. So when we go as a group, it just really shows how important and how much value we place in our public libraries. So I hope if you can join us, you will. You'll get some more details about that as far as what time we'll be leaving. But a few tips I like to give you if you might be new is be prepared to sit for a long period of time if you're able, because the bus ride, is about 4 hours each way. Wear comfortable shoes to wear while walking. Please bring a current photo ID to present at the security checkpoint. And then STLS provides light snacks, water, and a lot of fun on the bus trip. And then each individual can purchase meals at the Capitol Building food court and during stops along the bus ride home. So there will be some activities happening on the bus. We try to make it fun. But if you're more of an introvert and you just want to bring, your headphones and zone out or an ebook and read, that's totally fine as well. We want everyone to feel comfortable and, have a good time. Just as noted, some legislative districts maps have changed this year. This is due to the 2020 census data. So our state used that to redistrict for Congress, State Assembly, and State Senate. If you've been watching the news, the New York State population is going down. So some of our districts were redrawn because we lost a couple of seats. So I'll just make a note. If you've done this before, you might want to check, especially if you're in Allegheny County. So the 8 libraries that are from Belmont and East, they have moved into a different state Senate district. So you'll now be represented by Senator O'Mara and not Senator Borrello. But folks in Western Allegheny will stay with Senator Borrello. And then in Steuben County, some assembly districts changed for Arkport, Canisteo, Greenwood, and Hornell. So you might want to check if that's you. You'll have a different assembly person. Chemung County, the assembly district changed for Van Etten. So they might want to check as well. And then, as you probably are aware, Congressperson Tom Reed, who was the 23rd district representative for some years, left his job, and we had an election. So we're now represented in the federal House of Representatives by Nicholas Langworthy, if you're in the 23rd district. But Yates County, during the redistricting, was moved into the 24th congressional district, which is represented by Claudia Tenney. So just some notes, and Erica did put a list of all the districts and libraries on our advocacy webpage. So if you want to take a quick look and see if your representatives have changed, go ahead and do that, or you can send me an email and I'll help you with that. So some of the talking points that we ask you to consider, because we want your stories about what's happening in your libraries in our region so that we can tie them in with our elected officials' goals and the state's goals. So the 2023 budget should address the needs of all of us in diverse and critical ways. And to do that through libraries, we can use the funding for staffing. As many of you know, recovery from the pandemic continues to redefine how our libraries operate and provide services. We're still blending physical and digital. Communities have different needs. They have different interests, different types. It's obvious that our society has been greatly changed. So our staffing needs have changed as well. Some of us, like we heard from Sheila this morning, they're doing a lot of book boxes that they can get ready and people can just pick up. So she needs different staffing for that sort of service than a circulation desk service. Some people still want that grab and go service, or they want the take and make kits. And then you also balance with the folks who are coming into the library and physically meeting and physically using it. So it's important that we have enough funds to support staffing the different ways folks are using our libraries. Popularity of more pop-ups, bookmobile, story walks since the pandemic revealed that not everyone can easily access a physical or digital library. So it's becoming increasingly important to go out of the library space and into the community, which again requires more staff if you have someone at the physical library and someone out in the community. And then embracing our roles in providing community services, including distributing COVID-19 safety equipment, loaning telehealth equipment, more items that we're loaning. We've seen this develop more during the pandemic. This also requires hiring additional staff to take on duties of developing relationships with potential partners to offer these services. So those are just some of the things you might think about when you think about how your staffing needs have changed and how the increased funding will help that. Also, investing in new resources and technologies. As you know, technology constantly changes. We know that Overdrive is a popular platform used by libraries across our state, both school and public, and we use it for ebook and e-magazines. But as you also probably know, licenses are very costly and they restrict actual usage. So it's important to let our legislators know why that's important and how we could use the increased funding to help support that. And then investment in library facilities. As Brian mentioned before, construction aid is extremely important for our libraries when you consider especially that most of our libraries are over 50 years old. Some are much older than that. And as we also see lately, we have increasing prices in things like heating, fuel costs. So looking at more sustainable ways to equip your building, update it, retrofit, or build a new facility to fit the needs of your community just shows exactly how important the funding is for the construction aid program. And then, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, it's been in the news a lot. The New York state population is declining. It's declined by, I think it was 400,000 people in the last 2 years. There was a huge kind of exodus after the pandemic when folks moved to different areas. Folks are moving to different states because of various reasons. So if we can show our legislators how our libraries help strengthen our community by creating jobs, by creating places for people to meet and spend time, it shows why our libraries are so important in keeping people in the state, making people want to come to our state. I think that's going to be a really key point that we can help as libraries illustrate through our advocacy work. And I will turn it back over to Brian now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katura. The whole idea of Advocacy Day, and it seems like at the end here we've been talking a lot more about Advocacy Day itself, and I took a few notes as Katura was talking. One of the things that I just want to highlight, which she really did a good job of talking about, is just like the comfort level of participating in Advocacy Day. I remember my first Advocacy Day, and I was really intimidated of even wanting to go. So when I look at, when I look across the screen, I see some of you, a good number of you have participated in Advocacy Day, and you know what that looks like. But if you've never participated in Advocacy Day, it can be an intimidating thing if you've never been there before. But I remember my first experience, and like what I enjoyed about it the most was the system like held my hand through that experience, as well as other folks that had been there before. So, you know, you get on this bus, and like Katura said, if you're introverted, just throw on the headset and just listen to the podcast or your favorite tunes, or participate in some of the activities that some of us at the system will facilitate to make it an enjoyable ride and make the time go by by a little bit faster. But then you walk into the Capitol building, you're only outside for a couple seconds as you kind of unload from the bus, and then you walk through the concourse, and you get to see all these other people that are going to advocate not only for libraries but for other things there in the Capitol building. We get to go to the well, where there's going to be lots of library advocates from all across the state, and there'll be elected officials there that are speaking up on behalf of libraries, and we get to listen to their speeches and cheer them on. And then when you go to the actual visits with legislators, if you don't feel comfortable speaking, that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of other advocates that are going to be in the room with you that, they'll raise their hand and they'll tell their personal or professional story about the work they do or the engagement that they had with their public library, and why it makes either other people's lives better or why it makes their life a little bit better. And so I remember that from my first experience going to Albany Advocacy Day. But I remember coming away from that experience, and I think most of you know me, I'm not that shy, so I was willing to speak up, after I went to a couple meetings. But like walking away from that experience, I was so charged up, and here I am almost 20 years later, still doing it every single year. There's really something that like actually helps you develop yourself as a person, in terms of like empowerment and just feeling part of something that's much bigger than you, but also something that you can control and actually touch and like actually have an impact in terms of how libraries benefit through the state budget. And so it's a lot of fun. And Keturah, I appreciate you just kind of sharing through those small details. But overall, advocacy is extremely important. We are underfunded. Great. I'm glad we got a 4.5% bump last year. It's not the $40 million that we need. We've never been equitably compensated for the information revolution of the 21st century technologies that we're supposed to house within our buildings. And it's actually, in some small ways, a slap in the face. We are one of the free, civic, democratic institutions within our community. I drive to all your communities. You are the institution on Main Street, in addition to the school district, where everybody from that community, from just being born to seniors, can come and have access to free information and self-educate themselves. We are the people's university, and in our rural communities, or even in our urban or suburban centers, that is so important. And that's why advocating for these resources is so important, because over time, since the mid 1990s, we've been asked time and time again to do more. Time and time again, we've been asked to provide more services. We've become the net or the catch-all for all the other services within our community, where those agencies are at peak capacity and they can't provide any more. And so those people, if they can't be met by those agencies, they come to us for a comfortable place to get on the internet and do e-government, or they come to us to literally pick up a jacket from a clothing sharing center within our public libraries, or come for food because it's not readily available and the door to the food pantry down the street is closed because it's not offering convenient hours. You guys know these stories. You do this work, and I could rant on and on and on about all the amazing things that we do, but we're not funded for it. And over time and time, every year that passes, we become the catch-all for a lot of our society's challenges. And we need to continue to step up, and we need to continue to make this fight, because we're important. We've been around since the beginning of time, since the beginning of this great nation, and we've been around since the Roman Empire. And we've obviously demonstrated that we're valuable, we're relevant, and we're not going anywhere. But we do need to be funded, and it's very important that we are. So before we get off here today, and I'm going to ask you guys to make the 4+4 pledge. Go back 3 years ago, it was the 2+2 pledge. Then we made it the 3+3 pledge, but we got to up our efforts this year just because of what I just said. And this year is going to be the 4+4 pledge. However, we just came off of a Directors Advisory Council meeting, and our new DAC chair led us through a really nice exercise called For the Good of the Order. And so we don't have to go through the whole entire group, but I am going to ask if maybe we could have 2 or 3 volunteers that would be willing to turn off their mic and share with us why they believe it is important to advocate, or why, if they've advocated in the past, why they keep coming back to keep doing it. Do I have anybody that would be willing to share?
I'll share, Brian. It's Kelly. So one thing, I've actually never been to Advocacy Day. I'm really hopeful I can go this year. So one thing that I think is super important for us to share with our senators and our congressmen is like statistics for us. They love numbers, right? So one thing that is important to me is noticing that we've had a huge increase in our circulation for juvenile statistics. It's increased over 120% since I started in 2021 compared to pre-pandemic. And I just think that's amazing. So we're seeing more kids in the building, ranging from early literacy all the way to young adult. And it shows in the numbers, and it shows when you come in. So I think that's really important to share with them.
Thank you, Kelly, very much. And I absolutely agree with you. They do like to hear those numbers. And actually, we've been sharing those numbers with them so many years. It's nice to see our elected officials actually like share those numbers back with us. Like when we go meet with some of our assembly reps, like Assemblyman Friend and Assemblyman Palmisano, who are really good friends of libraries. But they'll share those statistics, and they know like why people are coming into our building. Can I get one or two more volunteers?
Oh,
Hi.
it's Louise. Hi. Oh,
You
Louise,
go
how about
first.
you?
I'll go second.
Awesome. Thanks,
okay.
Louise. And Emily, you go up after Louise. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. So I think one of the primary reasons we need to do it is because there are a zillion other organizations and other causes, for want of a better word, that are there advocating. And so we need to make sure we're in that queue for the money as well. The whole squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing. And I find this advocacy really rewarding because our representatives do really support libraries. And so you're very welcome. I've been involved with other organizations where it's kind of an uphill battle with legislatures. So it's really fun to do this, but they still need to hear from us. Legislators are always hearing from the sort of naysayers, and we need to remember to give them our stories and also say thank you a lot. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Louise. Emily, how about you?
Yeah, I think, kind of similar to what Kelly and Louise have both said, but, I think sharing those individual personal stories, this is a really good opportunity to be able to do that, those one-on-one experiences that we get to have, and being able to share those really important, things that people don't get to see when they're not sitting there in the room with us. So, the times when we get to show someone who, someone who's 80 learning to use a computer for the first time, when they finally understand that and they have nowhere else to go to be able to learn that. Or, the time when, I use this story a lot, but, that LGBTQ youth, you wrap their book for them so they can go home in a safe way to be able to consume that information. And you're that safe person they get to talk to. So being able to share those stories and have those be heard in a really meaningful way, this is a great opportunity to share those.
Hey y'all, I'm Jennifer, and I used to work in school libraries, and now I'm in public. And I had a very interesting experience not too long ago with my own doctor, who actually had the audacity to say to me, "What's the point in libraries anyway?" And I'm thinking to myself, this is a very well-educated man saying this to me, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So apparently we need to definitely advocate. If we have people who, are very well educated, not understanding why we're even relevant anymore, since Google is out there. So Brian had mentioned the social issues, and our library is dealing with a lot of social issues with children who aren't fed and things like that we have coming in. And we want to be able to provide food for the kids that are coming in, the teen groups that are coming in, and it's extra money on our cost, and we want so much to be able to give social aspects of our library besides just books and technology. So I'm right on with let's get some money. I'll be there this year.
Ryan, can I just say one thing too? I know you said just 2 or 3, but
No, I keep it coming. That's great. Thanks,
okay.
thanks Jennifer. Thanks Emily. And Tina, you're up.
We had a town hall meeting that Senator Borrello held here in Cuba, and I went to it. And when I stood up to ask my question, I wanted to ask him about how soon we could see some more internet infrastructure into our rural community. And I introduced myself. He said, "Oh, I know you. You came to the Capitol to advocate for libraries." And like, not only was that astonishing to me that he remembered me out of all the hundreds of, probably thousands of people that advocate to him throughout the year, but he said that in front of all the people in my community who were at the town hall. So they know us, they remember us, we make an impression on them. So I just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Tina.
I'd like to share something very quickly. I've got just under 1.5 years under my belt as a director, which has been, I constantly learn, but something that I'm learning a lot is how much we work with other organizations, and, from blood pressure cuffs and hearing about, mammograms, working with Office for the Aging. I know a lot of people have bone builders in their libraries. It's not, it's not just books, but it's also, it is books too. If we don't have it, then I can reach out to another library in our system. So we share the resources that we have. So I think hearing about that and hearing the stories and the impacts and whatnot, I think is, for me, it's I learn every day, and it's amazing what we do. That's all.
Thank you, Denise. Is there anybody else that would like to share? Okay.
Brian.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Barb.
Hey, Barb, go ahead.
Well, it was mentioned before, but it never hurts to mention that continuing to thank them for their support, because we do have some very supportive legislators, but they do need the stories and the numbers so that they have things they can bring to their committees. And also how important construction aid is. We have a phenomenal building, and we would not, even though our fundraising was incredible, we could not have had this building if it had not been for construction aid. And I know a lot of the libraries have been able to update and make their facility more accessible, and it's just so important that we continue to get construction aid. And that's enough.
Thank you, Barb. And thank you everyone for sharing. I really appreciate that. Even for me, I just need to hear those types of things to keep me going. But it sounds like we've already got a lot of energy to take ourselves not only to Albany this year. It would be great if we just take everybody that's on this group and put them on the bus, and then we'd be good to go. But we have a lot of work to do when it comes to getting those postcards filled out by our patrons, and also engaging through social media, through our social media platforms as libraries, and tagging STLS as well as our legislators in them. And then also doing the take advocacy action. So sending emails, making phone calls, writing letters, and meeting with legislators. It sounds like a good number of us want to sign up for Advocacy Day, are going to do our best to show up for it. And then the other part of that 4+4 pledge is encouraging for other people to do it. So it's not only just the stuff that you guys are doing as librarians or library advocates, but encouraging for other people to do it. So not only by you taking that action, but by you asking 4 people to do it, now we've got five advocates, and we've just almost quadrupled our efforts to make that happen. So I think we'll end on this. I think all of you know how much I care about the work that we do. I have to be, by profession, one of the loudest voices for our 48 member libraries. The mission of STLS is to connect, empower, and advocate for Southern Tier public libraries, and it's something that we wear on our sleeve every single day. And so just by working with Keturah and Erica to facilitate this workshop and listening to all of your stories, that's meaningful stuff, and it's that meaningful stuff that actually changes lives. So I hope all of you will do the good work, and I know that you will over the next couple months to advocate for this funding. And also we look forward to you possibly joining us on the bus and going to Albany and advocating. We've got some fun activities in store, and sounds like we might also do a little bit of field trip while we're there too, so not just meet with elected officials. So we've got some stuff on the works on that. So with that being said, I want to thank all of you for being here. We're going to meet our time frame for today's workshop. It's 11:57, so we did it under 60 minutes. Stay warm, stay safe, and get out there and enjoy the weather too once all the snow stops coming down. Thanks for being here with us, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you when we see you.